Tonight I learned how a simple knock can turn an ordinary Tuesday into a turning point. When my neighbor Paul showed up unannounced with a dented shoebox and a story I wasn't ready to hear, my tidy plans for a quiet night unraveled in the best way. What was inside that box, and what he said when I opened it, shifted something in me I thought had gone quiet years ago. Before I dive in, tell me in the comments from which city you're watching us. I love seeing where everyone is. Detroit, Tampa, Portland, Amarillo. Drop your city below so I can picture the neighborhoods and porches you're sitting on while you listen. I was standing at the kitchen counter, waiting for the kettle to sing, the way it does when steam finds the one loose seam in its lid. The evening had the soft hush I save for myself once the sun tips past the neighbor's maple. I'd planned soup, slippers, and a crossword I never finish. A radio I keep on the windowsill fizzed with a weather update about thin rain drifting in from the west, the kind that makes the street look varnished and the air smell like pennies. Then came the knock. Firm, 2 beats, a pause, then a third, as if the person was asking a question with their knuckles. I peeked through the little diamond in the door. Paul. We've lived across the street from each other for years. We wave when trash day comes late or when a storm snaps a limb. I've borrowed his ladder. He's borrowed sugar. He wears his flannel shirts until the elbows polish smooth, and he has that craftsman's patience you hear in the quiet between his sentences. His wife passed away a few years back. That's the kind of thing you never forget about a person, even when most of your conversations are about whether the mail carrier got a new route. "Evening, Donna," he said when I opened the door, rain stippling the shoulders of his jacket. "Sorry to barge in like this. I have something that belongs to you, and I didn't want it to sit another night on my hall table." He lifted the shoebox. The cardboard was softened from age. Someone had once tried to peel a sticker from the lid and left a ghost of glue behind. "Come on in," I said, stepping back. "You saved me from another rerun." He thumped the box onto my kitchen table, the way men his age put down a cooler. Careful, like there are memories inside that might slosh. He brushed a streak of rain from his eyebrow with the back of his wrist. Without asking, I reached for a towel and set it on the chair. Without assuming, he waited until I nodded before he sat. That quiet choreography, offering and waiting, asking and nodding, has become a kind of language between us. "It was on my porch," he said. "Mail mix-up. Your name, clear as day." He tapped the label with a square fingertip. The skin on his hands is the kind that tells you he knows the difference between a Phillips and a flathead by feel. The kettle whistled. I poured him tea without asking, because that's another thing we've learned. When something warm is offered, take it. "What's in it?" I asked. "Figured you'd want the honor," he said, mouth pushing up at one corner. "But before you open it, your porch light's flickering. Mind if I check the switch? I've got my tester." "Only if you let me fuss about the tea while you do," I said, which made him chuckle. He set the box down like it was a sleeping cat and crossed to the door, pulling a tiny pencil flashlight from his pocket. Men of a certain era carry small tools the way women my age carry lip balm, always close, always ready. While he worked, I lifted the lid. Under a layer of yellowed tissue lay a tangle of bubble wrap and the shape of something square and flat. My breath did that funny hitch the body does when the past steps into the room wearing new shoes. I knew that sleeve size before I saw the cover. Vinyl. I eased the record free. The sleeve showed a woman in a cornflower blue dress leaning into a microphone like a sweet secret. The album's title was printed in a thin gold font I recognized from my 20s. On the back, in speckled pen, someone had written, "For Donna, play this when it rains. Love, Mom." The room flexed around me, softer, the way air shifts before a storm. My mother had loved this singer. We used to listen to her on Sunday afternoons while we ironed pillowcases we didn't need to iron. After Mom died, I hunted for that record in boxes and basements and never found it. And now here it sat on my kitchen table, a stranger's shoebox deciding to carry time across a street. Paul turned, watching my face the way some men watch ball scores. He read the change in my breath and walked back slow, careful not to bump the table. "That good?" he asked, though his voice said he already knew. I didn't think I'd ever see this again," I said. "It's like the past remembered my address." We both stood a moment without hurrying to fill the quiet. He set his tester down and slipped his hands into his jacket pockets. "Do you have a way to play it?" he asked. "In the den," I said. "It's a little finicky. Needle complains, but it still sings." "Could we?" He stopped himself. "Only if you want to. I can come back another time, or leave you to it." That's the thing I have come to like about Paul. He steps up without stepping over. "Let's," I said, and felt the word warm my throat. We padded down the hall. In the den, my turntable sits under a crocheted cover my aunt made, like a tea cozy for music. I lifted it, dust sent up a faint, chalky sunbeam, and Paul's flashlight cut a thin, kind line across the platter. He followed my lead, moving when I moved, still when I paused. We have both learned to move gently through rooms that hold memories. I set the record on the spindle. The rim clicked against the mat. I lifted the tone arm and felt the tiny tremble in my fingertips I get when I'm about to call someone I haven't spoken to in years. When the needle found the groove, the speakers gave a soft thud, as if the singer had cleared her throat on the other side. Then the first piano notes fell, small and round, and Mom's favorite track drifted out, familiar as a kitchen prayer. I don't cry easily anymore. Life has a way of toughening the places tears used to find. But the sound of that voice found the small door it always used and walked in without knocking. My throat tightened. I covered it with my hand the way people cover laughter in a theater. Paul didn't say there, or "It's okay." He did something braver. He stood beside me and let the song work. After a moment, he spoke. A low line, not a speech. I remember my wife humming this while she sanded a table we found at a yard sale. The dust collected on her eyelashes like sugar. He smiled, and for a second I could see her, the shape of her hands in his memory. When she got sick, she asked me to promise I'd keep fixing things. Music, chairs, myself. I'm stubborn, so I started with chairs. "That sounds like her," I said, though I'd never met her. He chuckled, and there was no embarrassment in it, just the quiet pride of a man who kept a promise. On the second track, the rain finally arrived, tapping the windows with the patience of someone who plans to stay. I poured more tea, and we sat on the edge of the old blue sofa that sags in the comfortable places. The song let us speak around it, like a campfire. "Do you ever feel like your life shrank while you were busy paying the bills?" I asked. I didn't mean to. The question slipped out the way change slides out of a coat pocket when you lift it. "All the time," he said. "I measure days by what I fix. But some days, the quiet feels heavier than the busted stuff." "Me too," I said. When the house creaks, I answer it out loud, just so the air doesn't have to hold its breath by itself. He looked at me with that careful attention that feels like warmth without heat, the safe kind. We listened. Another track. Another memory that didn't hurt like it used to. By the time Sida ended, the rain had settled into a steady lullaby, and the porch light had stopped its nervous blinking. Paul noticed. "Timer relay," he said, half to himself. Knew it would calm down once I coaxed the switch. He didn't tell me I owed him anything. He didn't try to make himself the hero. He just happened to be there when something needed steady hands. "Thank you," I said, "for the record and the light and the company." He lifted the sleeve's edge, reading the song titles like a map. "I don't want to overstep," he said, "but I didn't just come to drop this off." He looked at the shoebox, then at me. "I've been sorting the garage. It's full of the kinds of things you keep when there's nobody to say, 'You don't need 15 coffee cans of screws, Paul.' Found something else. Thought it might be yours, or at least belong where it could be appreciated." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a Polaroid, its white frame browned at the corners. In it, a younger me stood with my mother at a street fair, both of us laughing crookedly at something out of frame. Behind us, a bandstand, the same singer's name in looping letters on a banner. I remembered the fair, the heat, the lemonade with too much ice, but not the picture being taken. "Where did you?" I began. "Estate sale 2 streets over," he said. "I help them sometimes when folks get overwhelmed. Your mom must have known someone on that block. I recognized you from your mailbox photo, the one of you and your sister holding the cat that hates everyone." I laughed. "He hates everyone with fairness," I said. He placed the photo on my palm like something fragile and alive. "I want to ask you something," he said, and his voice had the steadiness of a man who uses his words like nails, measured, placed where they'll hold. "But only if the timing is right for you." My heart did a practical thing and checked the room for exits. Not because I wanted one, but because habit is its own kind of muscle. He must have seen the calculation because he didn't rush into the ask. He looked at my hands instead, the way my thumb traced the edge of the photo, the way I tucked the record sleeve under my arm, as if it were a book I planned to lend to a dear friend and would gladly never see again if it meant they'd loved it more. "You can ask," I said, surprised by the calm in my voice. The rain and the music had smoothed out the usual static that buzzes in me when something might change. He nodded. "Not yet," he said. "I'd rather ask after we've flipped to side B, after we've both had time to let the song we just heard finish echoing where it needs to." That answer did something to me I didn't expect. It made me feel taller. Seen, but not cornered. A lot of men my age hurry because they're afraid time won't grant them another chance. Paul wasn't wrestling time. He was working with it like wood grain. We stood and walked back to the turntable. I set the record gently, the way you return a sleeping child to a crib. Before I lowered the needle, he spoke again, almost shy. "Truth is, Donna, I didn't know how to spend my evenings after the house got quiet. Today, holding this box on my hall table, I thought maybe the evening could be something other than a thing I have to survive." He swallowed. "I thought maybe it could be shared." I looked at him and saw not a rescuer or a project, but a person standing in his own weather. I felt that familiar ache, loneliness recognizing itself in someone else, and instead of doubling, halving. "Let's see what side B has to say," I said. When the first notes rose, softer and lower, the porch light steadied like it had finally remembered its job. We didn't touch, not yet. Instead, we let our shoulders find a rhythm of their own as we stood a polite arm's length apart, 2 people old enough to know that respect is the first good dance step. The rain stitched a neat seam along the windowsill. The room felt held together by small, capable things. Halfway through the song, with the calm that comes only after a long season of waiting, Paul cleared his throat. He turned toward me, the question he'd been carrying finally ready to set down between us. And that's where I'll pause, because the next words he spoke, and what they opened in me, deserve their own careful telling. Paul cleared his throat, and in that pause between his inhale and his words, I felt the weight of the whole evening balancing. He looked at me with steady eyes, the kind that didn't demand anything but invited everything. "Donna," he said, "I don't want to make this complicated. I know life already has a way of tying itself into knots. But tonight feels like a door cracked open, and I'd like to know if you'd want me to step through." The rain softened against the windows, and the singer's voice on the record folded itself neatly into the quiet that followed. My hand tightened around the Polaroid, its glossy edge pressing into my palm like proof that the past could still show up unannounced. "What does stepping through look like to you?" I asked, my voice lower than I meant it to be, as if I were afraid the question might scatter if I spoke it too loud. He smiled, not broad, not flashy, but the kind of smile that reaches the corners of a man's eyes. "It looks like walking across this street on purpose, not just when a package ends up on the wrong porch. It looks like sharing evenings that don't have to be heavy anymore. And maybe it looks like dancing slow to side B of this record, even if the floor creaks worse than our knees." I laughed, the sound slipping out before I could stop it. But there was no embarrassment in it. There was relief, because I hadn't realized how much I wanted someone to ask me for something simple, something that wasn't a favor or a fix, but a choice. We didn't dance that night, not yet. Instead, we sat side by side on the sagging sofa, letting the music fill the places words couldn't. He told me about the table his wife had sanded, the way she whistled off-key when she thought no one was listening. I told him about my mother's Sunday ironing, how she hummed to this very album, as if she believed wrinkles didn't stand a chance against love and melody combined. The more we spoke, the more the room shifted. It wasn't just a den with dusty speakers anymore. It was a place where grief and gratitude could sit together without arguing, where two people who had lost much could find that loss didn't have to mean emptiness forever. At one point, Paul leaned forward, elbows on his knees, staring at the carpet like it was holding a secret. "I've been thinking," he said slowly, "maybe we carry too much alone. Maybe we mistake being strong for being silent. Tonight, I don't want to be silent anymore." His words pressed something in me I'd been holding for years. "I know exactly what you mean," I whispered. "I talk to this house like it's a person because silence scares me more than creaking floorboards ever could." We let that truth hang between us, neither of us flinching. It felt like an admission, but also like a promise. The record clicked softly at the end of side B, the needle spinning in its endless loop. I stood to lift it, but Paul placed his hand gently over mine, not gripping, not pulling, just resting there, steady and warm. "Leave it," he said. Sometimes the sound of waiting is just as important as the music. We sat like that, listening to the soft hiss of the empty groove, the rain easing into nothing. And in that quiet, I realized something. I wasn't afraid of the silence anymore, not with him sitting beside me. By the time he rose to leave, the clock had ticked well past midnight. He stood at the door, his jacket dry now, his shoulders less burdened. "Thank you, Donna," he said, voice low but sure. "For the tea, for the songs, for letting me carry something tonight that wasn't just an old box. Thank you for bringing it," I said. "And for asking." He gave a small nod, the kind men give when words have already done their job, then stepped into the quiet street. I watched him cross back to his house, each step purposeful, the rain-washed pavement gleaming under the porch lights. When I closed the door, I looked back at the record player still humming its endless circle, the Polaroid resting by the teacups, the shoebox folded flat on the counter. My evening hadn't been ruined by an unexpected knock. It had been rewritten. And for the first time in a long while, I went to bed with the window cracked open, letting the air and the possibility drift in. Because tomorrow, I knew, might not be heavy either. And so, friends, as I sat there in the quiet after Paul left, I couldn't help but think how easily an ordinary evening can turn into something unforgettable. At our age, we sometimes believe the best chapters have already been written, but nights like this remind me that life still has a few surprises tucked away for us. If you've ever had a neighbor, a friend, or even a stranger change your day in ways you didn't expect, you know exactly what I mean. Tell me down below where you're watching from, and maybe share your own story. I'd love to hear it. Because no matter our years, we're still learning, still connecting, and still finding that life always has one more song to play.